Women and pregnancy, and we all just die. No bother, you know, just give birth there. Honestly, hilarious. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. This week I'm going to be talking about women and pregnancy and or lack thereof, and basically people feeling that they can comment on women's bodies or women's reproductiveness or just general anything basically. Sometimes I feel like I can't really do a video when I haven't experienced it myself at all. I haven't ever been pregnant or tried to, that's just not where I'm at right now. But this is just an issue that I'm seeing more and more. Like, I'm reading about it and it's just a really big issue. So I'm just kind of like, oh, even if I haven't experienced it, I'm still going to talk about it because it's a big feminist issue and I think it needs to be discussed. Yeah, it's hilarious. So I think this is one of those things, and it's kind of taken me a while, I guess, as well to get on board because I personally haven't experienced it, so I wasn't that sure. But this is probably one of those issues where people think like, oh, that's not a big deal and that's not a thing. But like, the more you see it crop up, it's just huge. And like, basically, I'm going to talk about people commenting on women's bodies, whether they're pregnant or not, when they are pregnant, people commenting then, and just kind of the general aura around this. So let's get right in. So I think we see people who maybe have put on a bit of weight or something, or they maybe look a bit bigger, and we think it's okay to comment. We think it's okay to say, and this particularly happens with famous people. You know, we all see celebrities put on a bit of weight and we all just die speculating whether they're pregnant or not. And it's like, who gives a shit, honestly? And it's like, there are so many reasons that it's not okay to do, even if they're not pregnant. And if they are, there's so many reasons, and I will go through them now. First of all, you may have just put on a couple pounds. There may be no baby. You may have just put on a couple pounds. Why do we think it's okay to assume that you're pregnant? Why do we think it's okay to make a comment? You know, that person might be insecure about the couple pounds they put on. They may have an eating disorder, and so, you know, you making a comment that you think, you know, is perfectly innocent. You're like, oh my god, I'm pregnant, and it's like, oh no, I just put on a couple pounds. That person might not eat for a week after that. It's not okay. This person may be on medication that they maybe don't want to talk about because it's maybe a serious illness or something, and maybe the medication is making them put on weight. Again, like, if you comment, it's going to force that person to be super, super awkward and be like, no, just this. It's just, again, it's just not okay, and it's just nobody's business. And then, you know, even worse, then, you know, you might be trying to get pregnant, which is not easy. I think there's definitely, and this is something I've learned from past years, we definitely think it's like really easy to get pregnant or something. It's not. Like, miscarriage in particular is disgustingly common. It's huge. And just because like getting pregnant is natural and stuff does not make it easy. And I think particularly that's a feminist issue because women go through so much, or, you know, people who can get pregnant go through so much, and we just think it's like, no bother, you know, just give birth there. No, it's extremely hard. So maybe you are trying to get pregnant and it's not working for you. That's really upsetting if someone's like, are you pregnant? And you have to say, no, not yet. And maybe deep down you're thinking something's wrong with your body or something, you know, doesn't actually work the way it should, and someone's here commenting and making you have to admit that to yourself and say that out loud when you might not even be sure. Like, that's horrific. Again, I haven't been through that, but I mean, that must just be traumatizing. Maybe you had gotten pregnant and maybe you had a, you know, bit of a bump and then you miscarried, and maybe you're still showing a bit. Someone asks you, are you pregnant? And it's like, no, actually I just had a miscarriage. Again, like, it's just so not okay to ask someone. And again, I said it took me a while because it's something that we all do and we're all so used to it. But I think it's just time we stopped, honestly. I mean, and I don't even think it's like one of those things that people need to kind of give out about. Like, we need to be like, oh, why can't we comment on women's bodies? Why do you want to so bad? Like, what? How is it affecting your life if you don't? Like honestly, it's just not that big of a deal. Like, why? You know, it's a big deal to people you're asking. So why can't you just not? You know, it doesn't affect your life at all. If they want to tell you, they'll tell you. If they're not pregnant, they're not pregnant. They don't want to tell you anything. It's just honestly hilarious the more you think about it. Then there's also, you know, if you've gotten pregnant, you're starting to get a bump, but maybe you haven't told anyone, which is super, super common because people fear that something might happen, particularly in the first trimester, or they might wait even longer because maybe they've had a miscarriage before, or the baby or the fetus has some kind of, you know, has some kind of difficulty or something where they're not even sure how the pregnancy is going to go. So they don't want to announce it yet for fear that something bad might happen. So it's just, every kind of, and I've done a bit of reading on this, and just there's so many examples of why it's not okay, and each time I'm like, oh my god, yeah, that must be horrific to have to say to people, like, oh my god. And then I think there's another one, you know, if you're kind of out to dinner with your friends or something, and maybe you just don't want to drink, you know, maybe it's a random Wednesday night, and you're like, oh no, I won't have wine, I'll have water, and everyone's like, oh, is she pregnant? And it's like, oh my god, no, I just want a drink of water. But maybe you are, and it's like, if you haven't told people, there's a reason, and people shouldn't push it. And it's just so interesting how people are just so obsessed. And again, I think it comes back to this notion that, like, you know, women are just reproductive vessels. You know, so we freak out when we're like, okay, women are doing their jobs. You know, they are reproducing. And it's like, we are so much more than that, first of all. So why are we just fixated on this one thing? Obviously, yeah, birth is a miracle and, you know, all this lovely stuff. But it is not the makings of a woman. It is not her sole reason for being on this earth. So why are we just obsessed with it, and why can't it just be this personal thing? Then, you know, like another one is like when you say are pregnant and say, yeah, you're very visible and you've told everyone, absolutely fine, people think they can like touch your bump. Like people think it's like totally fair game to touch your bump. Like, can you imagine? Apparently it's absolute randomers that are coming up to women, like in elevators, like on the street, and they're like, oh, like touching. Like, would you go up to a randomer and touch their arm? Or like touch their head? No, you would not. Like that's not okay. That's practically assault. Like, no, you wouldn't. But because the woman's pregnant, we think, oh, she's putting it out there into the world. She can't help it. She's pregnant. You know, we think that like, oh, I have it right now because she's very obviously pregnant. So it's out there, so I'm allowed to touch this. It's so warped. Like, no, you're not. And it's like, what are you meant to do if a randomer like comes up and they're just touching your bump? Like, are you meant to be like, no? Like, it's just so awkward. Or like people commenting me like, oh, I think it's a boy now because it's lower, like the bump is lower or something, or it's a girl because it's higher, or it's this shape and this shape. And again, just no, because particularly in Ireland, you know, obviously abortion was just legalised and it's still not fully working properly. So there would have been a lot of women who would have had to carry full pregnancies to term that they knew were not going to live outside the womb. So someone coming up and being like, oh, is it a girl or boy, touching your bump, touching this really sacred space, like that's horrific and so insulting and traumatizing. If you know that the second this comes out of the womb that it's not going to survive, like, oh my god, I just can't even think. It's just not that simple of an issue. It's just this huge thing. And I'm really just having a moment myself where I'm kind of like, yes, wow, this is really an issue. This is huge. And I'm just like spreading the knowledge because we all need to just stop commenting on women's bodies. In general, we need to stop commenting on women's bodies because they are not fair game. They are not up for question. They are not for you to, they're not for you. They're not for you, you know, it's as simple as that. Even as well, like, you know, we obviously get pregnant and you put on weight or whatever, even if it's a perfectly healthy fetus and it's all, you know, going to plan, and people come and go, oh, you've gotten huge. Like, if someone told me I'd gotten huge, obviously nothing wrong with being bigger, but like, if someone told me I'd gotten huge, I don't know what I would make of that. I don't know what I'd do. Like, what are you meant to say? Thanks? Like, it's just so awkward. What, like, and people, I think they don't like hear themselves, or they don't like realize when they're saying things. I'm just like, do you hear yourself? Like, oh god. And like, you're pregnant, you're more emotional, your hormones are flying all around the place. I think people should literally just be like fawning at the feet of pregnant people or pregnant women when they're pregnant, because it's just such a tough time, I imagine, you know? It's just horrific. Obviously, there'll be so many more examples, but they were just, you know, some of the few that, why it's not okay. And I hope I've like driven it home that it's just not okay to comment on women's bodies. And like, I always think like, you know, you hear the example of, you know, like say when men on the street shout, you know, even nice compliments and like, oh, you look gorgeous, you look stunning. And there's always this question of, does your want to compliment this woman trump her need to feel safe and secure in her surroundings? And like, the answer is no. Like, it would take nothing for a man to not say that. Like, he doesn't need to say that. And like, whereas she will feel 10 times better for having him not say that. So yes, her need to feel safe and secure trumps his need to shout a random compliment at a woman. And I think the same goes for pregnancy. Like, for you, it's just an offhand comment that you don't need to make. Your life will be no different if you don't make this comment. Yes, inside you might be wondering, is she pregnant? Is she not? Deal with it. Live with it. But for her, that could save so much heartache and so much pain. And it could be, her life would be made a million times better by you not making that comment. So I just think we need to just not be nosy. And I think, you know, a lot of us are nosy to begin with, but I think there's nothing nicer than someone coming to you and telling you something when they're ready. You know, it's not nice to push someone into telling you something that they don't want. If they haven't told you, there's a reason, you know? Or if they haven't mentioned anything, there's a reason. If you don't know this person, you do not have a right to comment on their body. It's really simple actually, but really obviously not, because it's kind of this hard one for people to grasp. So, but that is it. You know, I hope I said I've driven the issue home. And I mean, even just, you know, watch this video and go read, go see women's stories, because there are so many, oh my goodness, of women just saying the same thing over and over again. So yes, that is today's video. I hope you liked it. I hope maybe you learned something from it. Yeah, again, let me know in the comments, or like my video or like my page or anything. I would be very, very grateful. And I will see you all in the next one.